All right. Hello there, everyone. Welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. We are your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. My name is Robert Winfrey, and I am your host, per usual. Uh, I don't know how long this is going to take today. The review portion should go fairly quickly. You can already tell whether or not it will. Uh, because UFC on ESPN plus 118 was not very good or interesting for the most part. We will be previewing UFC 320 as well and talking a little bit about some news. There wasn't a whole lot this week. Dana seems like he was saving something for this coming week, so yeah. Um, I got to get a few things off my chest in the intro portion here, so I hope you'll all bear with me for a minute. So, geez, what a week. My grandmother passed away on Thursday. Which we all kind of knew was coming. That was the news that it was gonna be soon was kind of what I got hit with a little bit before I recorded last week. So that was uh, hard, but not as hard as some other losses for a number of reasons that I'm not gonna delve deep into here. Um, then, boy, Sunday was sure fun for me. Late Saturday morning slash early Sunday morning, depending on where you were in the United States. We got news that the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Russell M. Nelson, passed away. He was 101, which, well, again, a little bit rough. I've done the I've done this before with, prior prophets that have passed, and I'm seeing a bunch of the younger people in my ward like be actually kind of affected by it was I don't know. I don't know if I expected something different. So that's always a little bit difficult. And, then to top it off, there's always the cadre of the worst people on the internet who can't stop trumpeting about it. And I probably could have ignored most of that because there's always those people. But then somebody shot up and burned down actually an LDS meeting house in Michigan. And now a bunch of if you're not familiar with some of this, I apologize if this sounds weird. The usual people are out doing well, it's sad, but. And boy, did I not need a reminder of just the worst aspects of people, the worst bits of their nature that they'll give into. I saw a boatload of that after the Charlie Kirk thing. I'm not going to go on another thing here about it, so I'm happy to let what I said there stand. But reminder in short order about it. Yeah. So it's been a tough few days. Yeah. So if this one, once again, if this episode winds up, awkward or whatnot, um, that's the why. That's the why of it. So I appreciate your patience with the fact that life has thrown a lot of us several. I can't even call them curveballs, but just like heaters at the dome. you know, over the last little bit. So, yeah, that's where we are with that. All right. As always, anything you can do to help the product is appreciated. Interacting with it a little bit, like, comment, subscribe, star rating, written review. Y'all know the drill with your podcast platform of choice. Sharing is appreciated. Really, just listening. That's the main thing. So, sorry, my heart is not in the, I hate to call it shilling, but the more rote, like, potentially occasionally boilerplate bits of this, like, my gratitude is not boilerplate. My appreciation for anyone listening to my ramblings that's not just something I rubber stamp. The other stuff kind of attached to it, yeah, again, it gets a little rote, and I apologize for that. But yeah, so let's anyway with that out of the way, let's jump into this, shall we? So UFC on ESPN plus 118. How did that go? Well, for me, it went okay, 10-2. Um, I swapped. I think there was the Montague and Carolina fight that I said I was just going to go with the favorite on fight night, and that it swapped to Montague. So I think that was the only change I made. Other than that, it just kind of was what it was. This fight lost a few things. It lost the Oban Elliott fight. Elliott got ill, which sucks because I was kind of looking forward to that fight. We also lost, put heavy air quotes around that one, the Justin Taffa and Sutherland fight. Can we be done with Justin Taffa at this point? He's missed weight at heavyweight, and he has more fights fall. He's had 7 UFC fights fall apart. I believe all of them are his fault. I'm going to double check that because I wish to be sure before I go too hard at that, but I'm pretty sure that, for crying out loud, there you are. I'm pretty sure they've all been him. So let me just drop down here. Yeah, Justin Taffa. Let's have a look, shall we? First of all, he's 4-5 with a no contest in the UFC. He's had, that his last 2 fights have fallen out. Okay, I'm gonna have a. So he had a fight with Rafael Pessoa canceled in 2020. I believe that was him. Yeah, Taffa pulled out of that one. He missed weight when he fought Harry Hunsucker. He had a fight with Jake Collier fall out. He withdrew from that. I'm pretty sure these are all him. His fight with Dontel Mays fell out because of him. His fight with Marcos Rogerio de Lima fell out because he got injured. Then his fight with Kennedy Nzechukwu, Taffa withdrew. And the Janata Janice fight, Taffa withdrew. So all of his UFC fights that have fallen out have been him. Can we just be done with this guy? He adds nothing. He adds absolutely nothing. Not a darn thing. Ugh. Be done with him. So, yeah. Is there anything else? I mean, last week we lost the Junior Taffa and Ibo Aslan fight fell apart a while ago. Um, we mentioned before we lost the Duho Choi and Daniel Santos fight, which is unfortunate because who doesn't like the Korean Superboy? This thing had like 16 fights at one point. It ended with 12. and it still wasn't all that good. So let's see again, 10-2. Didn't get the Magny fight right, but we'll talk about that weirdness. And Colby Thickness getting the win over Musasa. Okay. I will accept being wrong about that. Everything else, I mean, it's not like a lot of this was hard to call. I probably should have got the Magny one right. You could hear me. Anyway. Then again, like with how that went, we'll talk about it. So 10-2, I'm in love with that. Year to date, that's 289, 96, and 2 with 2 no contests. I'd like to crack 300 before the end of the year. That seems very, very doable. And yeah, I think apart from that, that's like my only remaining goal, theoretically, because at this point, I also don't think I'm going to wind up negative. So, all right. As for the fights themselves, let's hit this fairly quickly. Carlos Ulberg knocks out Dominic Reyes, 427 of the first round. Um, bit of an odd fight. Both guys like to fight a little bit more on the back foot. They like drawing people into stuff more than being super aggressive. And Ulberg was able to just kind of pull Reyes around enough to line him up. There were a couple of moderately interesting things I feel like I should point out. Reyes could never really. He didn't commit a whole lot to his offense, which I don't know if it wouldn't have just opened up a quicker finish, but it also like made what happened inevitable. There were some interesting defensive choices from Ulberg. Ulberg utilizes a long guard, does a bit of leaning. Both guys tend to fight tall with some of the, decisions, the pluses and minuses that come from that decision. Sorry. Um, but it had a weird thing. It had kind of a weird effect on Reyes here. He was almost never able to like make contact with Ulberg in any kind, and I don't even mean like landing clean. I mean like physical contact. A lot of the time when you're kind of just putting stuff out early, what you're doing is range finding. And that's kind of the goal. You are not necessarily trying to hit full power. If you hit, you know, gravy. But the goal is to get a feel for where they are in space and using some physical contact as well as the relative proprioception. That is what you are trying to utilize to get a feel for things. And Reyes was never able to really reliably make a degree of physical contact even for like measuring purposes. And I think it threw him off a little bit. Um, his defense had gotten a little bit better over his last few fights, but he'd also taken a giant step down in competition, which helped him a lot. I'm not even mad about it. It needs to be said. Here, though, I mean, the finish, he gets the number of times he would just like fake, especially with his hips, and then not do anything, and then like get jabbed or angled on, was pretty high. Then the finish comes with him kind of like faking his way in close, but he doesn't just fake with his hands. He brings his feet up for a bit of a hip feint, and it just. I'm not saying you can't do this. Let me be very clear. I'm saying when you hip fake like that, you can wind up square. Or it's easier for your opponent to get square to you, to get perpendicular. If you're in your fighting stance and you can be facing your opponent, again, perpendicular, that opens up all kinds of options for you offensively. And that's what happened here. Reyes overcommits on the fake, doesn't even really throw anything. Olberg fades to his own right. He fades into the power side a little bit. I don't know if he just had a really good read on that being a fake instead of a actually committed strike at that point, but and bear in mind, it's not that you can't circle that way, it's just I think he was doing it for a deliberate reason. You just got to be careful about circling into the power side, especially opposite stances, but that's the way he went, and as he does, a little bit of a check left hook as he gets off the line, the old 3, and then the right hand follow the 2. Right down the middle, Reyes is pretty square, gets crushed, and that's it. That's all she wrote. Somebody else pointed this out. I forget who it was on X. So I apologize, but if you go back and look at the vast majority of UFC knockouts, the guy getting knocked out is square. So often. I mean, it's a little bit wild. Just how often MMA fighters wind up kind of squaring up. The stance and the footwork, just something about it kind of abandons them when they get going. And that's not an accident. The more square you are, the more vulnerable you are. And Reyes was another victim of that here. That's 8 or 9 in a row for Olberg. He should absolutely get the next title shot. Pretty much full stop. With the potential, you know what? No. I'm not even going to throw a potential exception in there. I don't care if Pereira wins in fluky fashion. Olberg should be next. If you still want Ankalaev to get another crack at the belt when he comes for his next fight, okay, but he should not get the next title shot in absolute terms. But if you want to say his next fight should be for a belt, I can track that, and I don't think that's crazy. So Olberg should fight for the belt next. He's, the closest thing to interesting we've kind of got in this division. Division sucks. Don't know what else to tell you. Sucks for Reyes. He fought his way back. He authored kind of a career turnaround when most people aren't able to do it. A lot of that was because he took a couple of years off and then took a giant step down in competition. Again, none of which I'm mad at him about. And it's not like... It turns out Carlos Olberg for light heavyweight is actually pretty good. If Reyes wants to get to his third title shot, I don't think he's like 4 wins away. The division is just too weak. Sort of depends on who has the belt, but if he can get, one, say, kind of rebound win, if he can get a softer rebound win, and then actually get one that's, a top-ish guy, he's probably not that far. Mostly because the division sucks. Yeah, so that was that. And if you want to know how much this division sucks, in our co-main event, Jimmy Crute. Jimmy Crute's striking idea is just, you know what? I'm going to throw a calf kick. I'm going to eat like 3 punches in counters. I'm going to circle away. And then we're going to repeat this a couple of times before I find my way to a takedown. That's it. That's the Jimmy Crute game plan in a nutshell. It worked here on Ivan Ursulan. Got a takedown, got a reverse can opener, which is basically a camel clutch. Gets to the back, gets the hooks in and flattens things out, then gets one like wrist and forearm under the neck, grabs that with his other hand, and then just arches back. So it's not really a rear naked choke. Not only is the grip not what you would consider a rear naked choke at all, like there's none of the regular mechanics at play there. So, nice, unique little submission. But Jimmy Crute's continued success in this division is a damning indictment on the division. Don't know what else to say about that. Jack Jenkins next at featherweight beat Ramon Taveras via unanimous decision, 2:30-27 and a 29-28. This was an alright fight, mostly forgettable. At welterweight, Neil Magny defeated Jake Matthews via Darce choke, 3:08 of the third. Controversy here. Near the end of the first round, they're fighting in close, and Matthews gets kind of a guillotine as Magny gets a takedown against the fence. The arm's in good position, and Matthews then gets his guard. The problem initially is that he doesn't really have his guard in play. He's got the hand around you got the arm kind of around the neck, the chin strap position. But your legs have to be in play, otherwise you're not really doing much. So he gets his hands together and then gets his guard in play, and Magny winds up rolling to his back, giving up mount to try and release it. So it's a good guillotine attempt. And from mount, Matthews goes to the one-arm kind of mounted guillotine attack. And Magny, his arm that's kind of up, he's on a hip, he's not flat. He's a little bit on a hip. I think it's his right arm. For the sake of argument, let's go with his right arm. His right arm is the one that's higher in the air because his right shoulder's more off the ground, as his left hip his left hip and side is more on the mat. Right side a little more up. And his right arm kind of like sags back like it's limp. The ref comes over and grabs his arm and decides he's out. Says he's out, says the fight's over. Jake Matthews releases the choke because the ref touched him. Magny immediately goes, "What the hell, man?" And then the round ends. And the ref goes, No, the fight's not over, the round is over, despite clearly saying the fight's over. This idiot ref. Look, man, if you made a bad call about the stoppage here, okay, it's a bad call. You can't do this, though. You can't deprive Matthews of what he could have done for the last couple of seconds. Maybe he couldn't have got the submission. But when you say the fight's over, there is a massive physiological and emotional response to that. If you're a fighter, having to get yourself back into the fight mentally and physically after that, oy vey. So the ref said, no, the round, not the fight, despite clearly saying the fight was over. Idiot ref. Second round, a little bit more of the same from Matthews. And then in the third round, Magny does some of the pressure, sprawls away from a shot, gets a Darce, gets the tap. Neil Magny's success is an indictment on so much of the welterweight division. Guys, beating Neil Magny is not a mystery. I'm not saying it's the easiest thing to do in the world. Believe me, I'm not. But the book has been written on that guy for 7 years at this point. Minimum. He's not good at dealing with leg kicks. The problem is nobody thinks about throwing them Not nobody. Most MMA fighters don't think about leg kicks properly. They think about throwing them naked in space, for the most part. And Magny can get backed up to the fence, and then when he circles, you're supposed to kick the leg that's trailing. Nobody does this because they'd rather throw wide punches that probably miss. Now, do the right thing for a while. Throw them in combination. You can't just throw them in space from nothing. Magny likes to jab a lot. Don't wait for the jab to land and then decide after that I'll throw the kick. You kind of got to intercept. Make it simultaneous. He doesn't deal well with leg kicks. He doesn't deal well with appropriately spaced pressure. But so many people punch him back to the fence and then out of habit fall into a clinch. That's not how you do this. This is not complicated. The way to beat this man is the same way the people have been beating him, again, for almost a decade. But too many people in this division apparently are stupid in the cage. I imagine most of their camps are not unfamiliar with some of this. I'm not the only one who sees this. I can't be. But you have to be disciplined with what you're doing. and stick to it as the fight goes on. And everyone just kind of doesn't. I mean, I think Matthews threw like 4 leg kicks this entire fight. It's not a good way to fight Neil Magny, man. It's just not. Tom Nolan defeated Charlie Campbell via rear naked choke, 4-8 of the first. Okay, a little fight for 4 minutes. Nothing super spectacular, but okay. On the prelims, Navajo Sterling defeated Adolfo Bellato in a fight. 2:30:27 to 29:28. Adolfo Bellato now has the Tapology Rainbow record. He has a win, a draw, a loss, and a no contest in the UFC. Sterling passes for a prospect because the division sucks. Middleweight next, Cam Roston defeated Andre Petrosky via TKO punches, 2:41 of the first. Big guy, Roston, like 6'4", I think. Pretty long. Just catches Petrosky with a fairly ugly check hook, actually. Lead left hand. It's more of an arm punch. There's almost no leg or rotation. It's just kind of swinging from the shoulder. But he catches Petrosky on the temple, and Petrosky does not have a great chin. Petrosky goes down. Roston gets on top, is able to pound things out. Petrosky is not very good and shouldn't be in the UFC at this point. The lightweight Jimmy Malarkey defeated Rolando Bedoya via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Malarkey kind of out-grapples Bedoya through rounds 1 and 2, and then doesn't in round 3, and just a fight. Colby Thickness defeated Josias Musasa via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. You could have scored this a few different ways. Thickness, his grappling is good, but his takedown arsenal is pretty weak. And it doesn't help that Musasa off of his back seems largely novice. That is not a space he's very good in right now. At women's bantamweight, Michelle Montague defeated Luana Carolina via unanimous decision. 29-26, 30-25, and 30-26. There was a point deduction to Carolina in round 2 for an illegal upkick. She kicked Montague square in the face and got a point taken. Good on the ref. I gave Carolina the first, but marginally. On the feet, Carolina generally did the better work, but Montague just kind of dogged her into clinches, got her down, was the much better grappler. Not a whole lot more to it than that. At heavyweight, Brando Parachek defeated Elisha Ellison via knockout punches, 155 of the first. Just kind of, low-level heavyweights, but Parachek might be what passes for a prospect at heavyweight these days. And kicking everything off, Alexa Thainara defeated Loma Lookbunmi via unanimous decision, 30-27 across the boards. Not a whole lot there, just a fight. And yeah, that was it. A very, very forgettable card. Apart from the main event, which kind of what everyone said. That's got relevance for the division. Everything else just kind of exists to fill this out. The UFC had to do some serious work to actually sell tickets. They booked this in Perth, which is kind of like, it's a major city, but as a major city, it's kind of isolated on Australia. It's in Western Australia. They did this like the same weekend, the same day as the Aussie Rules football title. I don't know, I forget what they call it. My apologies. The equivalent of the Super Bowl. There's like a rugby league finale as well. And so no one was buying the horribly overpriced tickets the UFC was selling to this, so they really cut prices. And eventually they did get an okay crowd eventually, but man, not what the UFC was expecting, clearly. They brought a crappy card. I don't know what they expected. And never mind, they don't actually care that much because the government of Perth or I don't know if that would be a city or a province thing where they spend that. I don't know. But, a giant portion of the UFC's revenue stream at this point is just getting tourism boards or their equivalent in different locations to throw them piles and piles of cash to bring the circus to town. Dude, they're doing it again here in Utah. Like WWE's bringing a double header of events here. They're not doing that because Utah has great crowds. Well, we have, we're not like the worst wrestling city in the world but no, it's because my tax dollars, because I live here, were allocated to paying TKO site fees to bring the circus to town. And like, I forget who mentioned it about a year or so ago, maybe 2 years. Like the actual fans are kind of the third priority for the UFC at this point in time. They care the least about what the fans are doing or saying. At the highest level, they care about what their broadcast partners think, and Paramount's about to give them $1 billion a year. Then they care about what the government groups that they solicit this kind of stuff from are paying. Then they care about them. Then maybe they care about the fans. But between what CBS, Paramount, whatever, is paying them and whatever site fees they're getting, like they don't actually care that much about ticket sales. Never mind the fact that the entire ticket sale little ecosystem is propped up in some bad ways. That's going to blow up real soon. Um, that's a whole other discussion. Uh, How did TKO, by the way, manage to make Vince McMahon look like the good guy? That came out, I think it was Mark Shapiro who said it, that the WWE ticket prices haven't been doing what the UFC has been doing, and they need to change that. The UFC, by the way, gouges horribly. Everyone's been acknowledging that. The problem is that people are still paying it, so I say they're horribly overpriced as like a value proposition, but until the market actually responds and rejects this, and they're just going to keep doing it. But again, that whole live venue ticket economy is really weird. Um, there's a lot of moving pieces to that make it look like one of those bubbles that's going to burst if you kind of know how to like read the tea leaves on that stuff. But again, Shapiro's like, yeah, WWE really does need to jack up the prices. And it came out that like the stopgap against price gouging for tickets in WWE for years was just Vince McMahon, who was firmly of the belief that WWE's events need to be affordable to the average to families. An average family needs to be able to afford to go to the circus when the circus comes to town. How did we get to the point where I'm defending something that, look, I have to be honest, like, Vince is by all accounts, not a very good person, but he had a sense for wrestling, for the most part. And yeah, apparently the TKO talking points managed to make Vince McMahon look like the good guy. Anyway, full report for all that over at the MMA Zone of 411mania.com. Stop by, say hello. You all know the deal about that. So thank you very much. All right, let's move on, shall we, to UFC 320. That will be coming our way this Saturday. I reset this. And we've got a... I don't know, man. I'm torn on this card. I'm trying not to be too much of a downer. Try not to be an unreasonable downer. You've got two title fights. I just don't care about Ankalaev and Pereira too, at all. I mean that, at all. So, I don't care. Other people might. God bless you if you do. The co-main event's a good, relevant bantamweight title fight. That's probably the fight I'm most looking forward to. Then, your featured bout's pretty good. After that, it's kind of whatever. Emmett and Zalal is whatever. Magomedov and Pfeiffer is definitely a big whatever. And after that, it's... Yeah. All things considered, if you just look at the pay-per-view card, I don't think it's horrible. I just don't care about the main event. And I'm not going to lie, that is coloring a lot of my enthusiasm for this card. Maybe I'll feel better about it by the time we get to Saturday. So, okay, so your main event, a rematch for the light heavyweight belt, Magomed Ankalaev, current champion, Alex Pereira, former champion. I wasn't very thrilled with their first fight. Ankalaev won, fair and square. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be weird about it. But, I don't really know what to expect differently out of this one. I mean, there's a few things that could be a little bit more in play. Pereira didn't calf kick a whole lot in that first one. Because he's just not... He's got good calf kicks, but he's not as comfortable kicking to the inside as he is to... he's much more comfortable kicking to the outside of the leg instead of the inside. And he really needs to get... If you're going to throw a lot of kicks at Ankalaev, and he's had trouble with guys who have been willing to commit to that, then you've got to be willing to go inside, because outside just opposite stance, outside calf kick just is not as much of a difference maker. It doesn't set up as well either for the most part. So there's that. The left hook is still a weapon for Pereira, of course, but his defense, especially if he gets kind of blitzed, it really, there's a lot of staticness to his upper body that people have keyed into for a while. It's just really started to become more of a problem for him now, against a guy like Ankalaev. I don't imagine Ankalaev will do a lot more wrestling this time than he did the first time. He did a lot of clinching the first time. We'll probably see a lot of that again. But I'm at a bit of a loss as to why I should pick what I think Pereira is going to do that's wildly different enough to really alter the course of this fight. That's not to say that Pereira can't win. He definitely has skills, but him winning will not surprise me if he does. Let me put it like that. Dismissing his skills would be very, very foolish. But the kind of adjustments he needs to make based on their previous fight, I'm not convinced he can do under the timetable that this fight is happening. It's maybe the right way to put it. So I'm going to pick Ankalaev, and we're going to move on. Co-main event for the bantamweight belt, champion Merab Dvalishvili, who is really starting to climb his way up. Is he really one of the best bantamweights of all time? He's getting the resume for it. Goes for his third his third title defense because he's beaten Umar and then Sean O'Malley in that particular rematch. And he's taken on Corey Sandhagen. This will be a fairly high-paced fight. Sandhagen likes a high-paced fight. Merab tends to prefer a high-paced fight. You need to be mindful of stalling from Merab. He does a fair amount of that. But Sandhagen has kind of the right mentality about this. You can't play a lot of defense with Merab. He'll just kind of outwork you enough. You have to be able to deter him. You have to be able to put offense on him. And Sandhagen is very committed to the offensive, to activity and offense. I think that's the right approach to take against Merab. I still struggle to see him finding the kind of sustained success that he will need. He's struggled a bit with strong wrestlers in the past. Merab's gas tank is otherworldly. Again, you would be foolish to discount Sandhagen, but I understand why all the odds have Merab at like minus 350 to minus 400. I understand it. I wouldn't personally be super comfortable with those odds. I think Sandhagen's chances of winning are better than those represent. But I understand Merab being the favorite. I am picking Merab. At this point, I'm not picking against him at bantamweight for the most part. Sandhagen, I do think, offers some compelling ways in which they match up. I think this will probably be the best fight of the night for people who actually care about technique in fighting. If you just like sloppy crap, then the next fight is the one that I think will excite you the most. But I need really compelling evidence to pick against Merab, and I like Corey Sandhagen. I think he's going to give Merab a tough fight, is kind of my hunch. But I can't pick against Merab. All right, your featured bout, light heavyweight, Yuri Prochazka and Khalil Roundtree. We have two guys who just like to do the wacky violence, and God bless them. Either one of them could win this. Yuri's a tad chinny. Roundtree, not exactly some bastion of unshakable damage absorption. He's coming off a win over Jamal Hill, and wasn't a whole lot to that fight. Yuri, he got his, his Masters? He got, I believe it was his master's degree that he got recently, and once again, good for him. Let me have a quick look. Yeah, he did. He got his master's degree. So, again, good for him. Coming off a win over Jamal Hill, he stopped him in the third round. That was a pretty good performance out of him, all things considered. I mean, it's probably just Yuri. I don't dislike Khalil Roundtree, and given how both of these two guys fight, like either one of them could land the blow that just wildly shifts momentum and puts the other one out. And you're kind of just flipping a coin here. But Roundtree's fairly methodical and fairly standard, fairly traditional in his offensive weapons and his approaches, for the most part. Yuri is the opposite. So, going with Yuri, there's a little bit of sentimentality going on there. I prefer Yuri Prochazka fights to Khalil Roundtree fights as a general rule. At featherweight next, Josh Emmett and Yusuf Zalal. Josh Emmett has gotten into very good shape, all of which he will use to chase after a circling Zalal and miss overhand rights. He's 40. Zalal is 29. Zalal's on a long winning streak. He hasn't lost since 21 when he dropped a split decision to Sean Woodson. Yeah, since he's on a, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's on a 7-fight winning streak, including being 4-0 since returning to the UFC last year. Look, Josh Emmett has the great equalizer in terms of weaponry because he hits really, really, really hard. His setups for it are fairly standard. He's a strong wrestler, but he doesn't use it anymore. He's reached the phase of his career where he just likes to be strong and likes to throw the punches and likes to try and knock you out. And against a taller, younger, faster, slicker opponent, that rarely goes the way of the old warhorse. So I have very little hesitation picking Zalal here. And kicking off the main card, Joe Pyfer, for some reason. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He stopped Marc-Andre Barrio. He beat Kelvin Gastelum in a fight no one remembers. And now he's taking on Abus Magomedov. I don't care a lick about this fight. Magomedov on a 3-fight winning streak against low-level opposition for the most part. I don't know. What are the odds? Odds are with Pyfer. That's probably right. But, again, I don't care. Okay, moving on to the prelims. Ateba Gautier and Osman Diaz, they kind of seem to think they've got something with Gautier, and God bless Ozzy Diaz, but he is not here to spring the upset. I mean, he's going to try. I hope he, makes a good account of himself, but what the UFC wants out of this is fairly obvious, and I don't have a lot of reason to think that Gautier is going to fall apart against Ozzy Diaz. After that, we have Edmund Shabazian and Andre Muniz. The bottom's kind of fallen out of Muniz. There was a time I had some optimism around him. Then he lost to Brendan Allen, lost to Paul Craig, got a split decision over Jun Young Park that he maybe shouldn't have, and then most recently was stopped by Ikram Aliskerov. Yeah, I think the bloom is off the rose for Andre Muniz. I mean, the dude did break Jacare's arm. It's not like he's some bum. But Shabazian seems to be a little bit reborn. He beat Dylan Budka and he beat Andre Petrosky, and neither of them are all that good. But he's on his first winning streak since 2019. That's not nothing. And again, I think Muniz is probably about done. So I'll go with Shabazian. I don't feel good about making that pick, by the way, because I don't feel good about picking Shabazian as a general rule. Bantamweight's next, Chris Gutierrez and Farid Basharat. This is not a terrible fight, actually. Gutierrez coming off, he got 2 wins. He beat Kwang Lee. He beat John Castaneda up at featherweight. I think the problem with Gutierrez is he's a good kicker, strong kicker. His hands aren't quite there. He does a lot of circling. And I don't know how well that's going to line up with Farid Basharat. Farid is, I think, the better of the 2 Basharats. On the flip side, Farid's been off for about a year, coming off a win over Victor Hugo up at featherweight. I want to say that was dubious. No. Sorry, that wasn't. I'm misremembering. Um, Probably Basharat here is my hunch. Gutierrez will be a good test for him, I think. This does represent a step up in class for Basharat, but it's a reasonable one, and given some of Gutierrez's tendencies at this point, I'm okay going with Basharat. Let's see. After that, we got Daniel Santos and Ju Sang Yu. Let me have a quick look at these two. So Santos was supposed to fight, actually on this last card, against Doo-Ho Choi. Choi fell out. These two got bumped to this event for reasons. Santos on a 3-fight winning streak. He's 3-1 in the UFC. He's had several fights fall out over the a little bit here. He dropped his debut to Julio Arce, then he beat John Castaneda, beat Johnny Munoz, had 3 fights fall out, all of which I think I would not have favored him to win. Then he beat Jeong Young Lee, and now he is fighting Ju Song Yu. Just lining up the Koreans. So Ju Song Yu is undefeated, 9-0. Won his UFC debut when he beat Yekasaragi back in June. This is a tough UFC debut. If you're you, that's a tough ask. Santos is pretty good. It seemed like a pretty good prospect. So I'm gonna lean towards Santos. I'm only picking favorites. I got reasons for all of these beyond the odds, but good grief, I think I have. Do I want to pick you just to buck that trend? Man, I might. Let me think about that one. I'm going to asterisk this fight of all things. I haven't asterisked anything else on this entire card. Let me have that one. See, then we've got Macy Chasson and Yana Santos. Chasson's the favorite. That's understandable. She's coming off a loss to Ketlin Vieira. She'd won 2 in a row before that. Wins over Pandy Kianzad and Mayra Buena Silva. The Buena Silva win was a doctor stoppage due to a really bad cut. Yana Santos, 2-fight winning streak over Chelsea Chandler and Misha Tate. Close fight on the odds. They're with Chasson. I'm actually going to go Santos. No, I don't need that one asterisk. Thank you. Autofill. Chasson's not bad, but she's been a little bit soft to the body. Her game revolves a lot around her being able to get takedowns. That's not impossible against Yana Santos, but it's a little bit more difficult, and Santos has some really nice knees, especially in the clinch. So I got to pick, for the sake of like not just picking favorites, and I have good reason to pick Santos here too. Again, that's a close fight, so. After that, bantamweights next up, rather. Patchy Mix trying to shake off the terrible impression he left in his UFC debut, which was a stinker. He will fight UFC newcomer Jaka Viklats. So, no, it's a wa. So Vikwas? Vikwax. Vikwax. I don't know. That's what I'm going with. My Polish is dubious. Vikwax is Vikwax. Vikwax. It's a W, Dumbo. Polish W's are V's. Vikwax. He's a KSW vet, former KSW bantamweight champion. Um, last loss was in 2020. He's actually a pretty solid pickup for the UFC to try and actually attract regional talent instead of saying, "Hey, go through our puppy mill and then have 6 fights at 10 at like 12 and 12." None of the UFC talent pool's evaporating slowly. So Vikwax is not a scrub, and Mix looked real bad in his UFC debut. Now, some of that is Mario Bautista's good. Let's not downplay that. But Mix also looked bad. He just looked poor. He's kind of been going the wrong way for his last few fights in a lot of respects. He's only 32. It's not like he can't turn it around, but there's some of the dimensions here. So Vikwax is 5'9", 72-inch reach. Mix is 5'11", 71.5 inches of reach. The odds are with Mix. I would not feel comfortable at that one. Odds have Mix around minus 250. If you're just looking for value, then then Jakob there might actually be a very tempting value bet. Do I think Mix gets back to form here? I need to... Okay. I'm gonna pick, for the sake of right now, Vikwax. I know I've pronounced that with like 4 different accents. This thing, I apologize. For the sake of the moment, I'm gonna pick him, but I'm gonna asterisk this. I need to rewatch his last couple of fights. WAKLACZ. Yes. But again, I'm gonna throw an asterisk on that one. I need to look at his last couple of fights because I've seen a little bit of his work, but not enough to feel confident in my assessment just yet. Let's see. Next at welterweight, Punahele Soriano and Nikolai Veretennikov. Pretty easy Soriano pick here, I think. Veretennikov, bless him, he's tried, but he's like, what, 0-2? He's 1-2 in the UFC. He's coming off a split decision win over Francisco Prado. Dude lost to Danny Barlow and Austin Vanderford. Soriano at welterweight has been a bit of an interesting experiment. But Veretennikov has been a little bit of a disappointment in his terms of his output and results. And Soriano is good for a fight. So going with Soriano. Welterweight next, Ramiz Brahimaj and Austin Vanderford. The odds are with Vanderford. Might be a little bit of an interesting choice there. So Vanderford is what? 1-2 in the UFC? 1-1? 1-0, okay. Yeah, he beat Veretennikov. He's a pretty strong wrestler. You know, it's not like he's without skill. Brahimaj, that guy's been weird. 12-5, been really up and down. 4-3 in the UFC. Current 2-fight winning streak. Wins over Mickey Gall and Billy Ray Goff. Let's see. His losses are to Max Griffin. That was an ear injury. His cauliflower ear just burst. Court McGee and Temba Gorimbo. So the question is, like, if he struggles with wrestlers, how's that going to relate to Vanderford? And I can see why Vanderford's getting the nod on the odds. I think I'll respect that and go with Vanderford. And what, kicking everything off? Yeah, we have Veronica Hardy and Brogan Walker. Walker is 7-4, 0-2 in the UFC. She lost a tough finale in 22. Lost to Yasmin Lucindo in 23, April of 23, so she's been out for over 2 years. About 2.5. 2 1/3. Give or take. 2/3? I don't want to do math. So long layoff to try and get right. Veronica Hardy's a bit of a tough draw in that respect. 9-5-1, 4-5 in the UFC, but she did recently have a 3-fight winning streak. Then she dropped a decision most recently to Eduarda Mora. This is going to be kind of the telling one for Veronica Hardy. I'm okay picking her here. The layoff for Walker could be beneficial because she's young enough and green enough that taking time to just like spend it working on your skills and whatnot is not a bad idea. But I feel a little bit more comfortable picking Hardy is the only way I can phrase it. So that's where we stand at the moment. So Saturday, MMA Zone to 411mania.com. Y'all know where to find me. I will be covering UFC 320 per usual. So stop by, say hello. Always appreciate it. That took a little bit longer than I expected, but I can live with that. All right. So let's move on to the only bit of news that I have here. I'll go check, of course, before I close out. But um, Charles Oliveira has a replacement for the main event of the upcoming UFC event in Rio de Janeiro. In stepping to face him will be top-ranked lightweight contender Mateusz Gamrot. Probably about as good a replacement fight as we were going to get, all things considered. I am completely okay with this. Fight might not be great, but that's largely going to come down to how Gamrot's control lines up with Oliveira's jiu-jitsu attacks. But I'm not going to be super down on it and complain. I'm just simply going to note that if you immediately assume barn burner, that's a little bit less clear. It could be. It very well could be, and I won't be surprised if it is. I'm also not going to be surprised if it isn't. So take that for whatever it's worth. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to check the social medias one more time, see if there's anything new there. If not, we'll do plugs and get out of here. All right. Nope. I don't see anything new there. So let's get into plugs. Monday on Damn You Hollywood, Mark and I will be reviewing One Battle After Another. Seems to be a well thought of film. It's the latest Paul Thomas Anderson project, and he's made some really, really, really good movies in the past. So we'll give a full review to that. I think that's my only review. Let me check. There we are. Yeah, pretty sure that's the only thing I've got. So Friday, WWE SmackDown. Saturday, UFC 320, and we will be back here next week to review UFC 320 and go away. There we go. Sorry. Yes, we will be previewing UFC on ESPN Plus 119. That is the Rio de Janeiro card, now headlined by Charles Oliveira and Mateusz Gamrot. How's that card looking? Figueiredo and Jackson's okay. Renata Janiz and Mario Pinto will suck. Conoffley and Ricardo Ramos. Jafel Filho and Clayton Carpenter's a maybe. Why is there another heavyweight fight here? Why? Ugh. Another one. Walter Walker and Muhammad Usman. Why? Vicente Luque and Joel Alvarez will be pretty good. Simon Oliveira and Juan Lacerda. That's an iffy one. Okay, there's a couple decent ones there, but man, a lot of that is crap. I hadn't actually looked at that card. Oy vey. Well, that was supposed to be Luque and Ponzinibbio. Alvarez is normally a lightweight. I mean, he's an enormous lightweight, but he's normally a lightweight. That's weird. All right. Anyway, full preview next week. That'll do it for me. All right. That's it for this week, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate the heck out of you. Stay safe out there. See you next week. Until then, oh boy. As I already said, stay safe out there. Things are getting crazy. And continue to be well, be safe, and behave.